In tonight's news, Russia says it has begun reducing its military forces in Syria under the terms of a ceasefire deal brokered between opposition groups and the Syrian government. Iraqi troops carry out an unprecedented night raid and enter Mosul from the north for the first time as they begin a new phase in the 3-month operation. And duck and geese farmers in France say they are worried about their livelihoods as authorities continue culling hundreds of thousands of birds to stop the spread of bird flu. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Joudeh, who is on a regional tour to hand over His Majesty the King's invitation to Arab leaders for the upcoming Arab Summit meeting, was received in Marrakesh by His Majesty King Mohammed VI. Joudeh conveyed to King Mohammed His Majesty's wishes for continued prosperity in Morocco, saying His Majesty looks forward to the Moroccan leaders' participation in the summit in March. In his letter, King Abdullah hailed Morocco's active work in the service of Arab issues, namely the Palestinian issue, which remains the primary conflict in the region. His Majesty also noted the need for joint Arab deliberation and action at the summit to confront the ongoing threats by radical and terrorist groups. To Syria, and Russia today announced it has begun reducing its military forces in Syria under the terms of a ceasefire deal brokered between opposition groups and the Syrian government. Syrian Army Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Ali Abdullah Ayoub visited the Russian aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov, to mark the end of its mission, stressing the importance of Russian military support to Damascus in the war on terrorism. Here's more.
The Russian head of General Staff saying Moscow has begun a drawdown of military forces in Syria. President Vladimir Putin ordered the partial pullout of forces after negotiating a ceasefire deal with Iran and Turkey in December.
The first ones to leave the conflict zone will be ships of the carrier group of the Northern Fleet headed by aircraft carrier Admiral of the Soviet Union Kuznetsov. I would like to note that naval personnel deployment in the operation against terrorist groups allowed to liberate Syria's economic capital, Aleppo, from rebels in the shortest possible time.
The Admiral Kuznetsov, deployed in October last year, has been operating in the Mediterranean off the Syrian coast. Large-scale strikes on rebel forces were launched from the fleet in November. Russia's involvement has been credited for helping tip the bloody stalemate on the battlefield in favor of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad after more than 5 years of fighting. The truce, which came into effect on December 30th, has mostly been holding. Its sponsors say it excludes operations against Islamic State and Islamist militias.
Meanwhile, a temporary ceasefire has been agreed in Wadi Barada, a rebel-held area near Damascus, which the Syrian army has been trying to recapture. The area has a spring that provides supplies to millions of people in Damascus, where there is now severe shortage of water. The United Nations is cautioning that Syrian children are at risk of waterborne diseases in the capital, where there has been little or no water for 2 weeks. The two main water sources for the capital are Wadi Barada and Ain el-Fije, and according to the UN, both are not operating due to deliberate targeting. And although some neighborhoods can get up to 2 hours of water every 3 or 4 days, many people have turned to buying water from unregulated vendors at more than twice the regular price and with no guarantee of quality. A senior rebel official later denied reports of the Wadi Barada ceasefire. Elsewhere in the country, and in a strategically significant advance against Daesh in their stronghold in Raqqa province, US-backed militias captured an ancient citadel from the terrorist group. Ma'moun Abdel Karim, the Syrian government's antiquities chief, said the capture of the Jabr citadel by the Syrian Democratic Forces saves Syrian heritage and represents a victory for the Syrian people. The citadel on the banks of Lake Assad was recaptured yesterday, although the news was reported today. It is located near a dam on the Euphrates River that the US-backed alliance also aims to capture in the current campaign. The Syrian Democratic Forces launched a multi-stage operation in Raqqa province in November, aimed ultimately at capturing the city from Daesh. The first phase gained territory to the north of the city, and the current phase is targeting areas to the west. Over to Iraq, and in the battle to recapture Mosul, Iraqi troops entered the city from the north for the first time today as they begin a new phase in the 3-month operation. Soon, Iraqi forces will drive Daesh from its largest urban stronghold, said Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi in a speech after elite forces bridged a river under the cover of darkness in an unprecedented night raid. The advance is part of a major new push launched last week to seize ground in the city after progress has been stalled for weeks to protect civilians. A spokesman for Iraq's elite counterterrorism service, which is taking the lead in much of the assault on the city, said troops have taken territory in the overnight raid across a Tigris River tributary in East Mosul. Iraqi forces have so far recaptured more than half of eastern Mosul, but they have yet to cross the Tigris to face Daesh terrorists who are still firmly in control of the western half of the city. A total of 400 Iraqi cadets of the military college graduated today as the country marked its 96th National Army Day. The cadets proudly marched on the parade ground of their college to mark the anniversary of the creation of the Iraqi Army in 1921. A father of one Army cadet proudly said that his son follows in the footsteps of all his family members who had served in the army. He added that they all pray to grant them victory over Daesh and all those who support them. Greek and Turkish Cypriot leaders are set to meet in the coming days in what a senior United Nations envoy for Cyprus has called a historic opportunity to reunite the divided Mediterranean island after decades. 18 months of intensive talks between the estranged Greek and Turkish Cypriot communities will culminate at a meeting in Geneva on the 9th and continue with a high-level conference with the guarantor powers on the 12th of this month. Last month, Greek and Turkish Cypriots jointly staged a symbolic protest march delivering declarations to the offices of the Turkish Cypriot leader in the north and the Greek Cypriot president in the south. They demanded a solution to the island's division. The protesters said they were optimistic this coming round of talks could bring results. Two U.S. astronauts began a scheduled 6.5-hour spacewalk outside the International Space Station to begin upgrading the lab's power system. The station has 4 sets of solar-powered arrays, each equipped with 12 nickel hydrogen batteries to provide electricity when the lab is in Earth's shadow. The batteries are losing their ability to hold a charge, and all 48 will be replaced over the next few years with smaller, more efficient lithium-ion batteries. Today's spacewalk is the 7th for newly arrived NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson and the 3rd for Station Commander Shane Kimbrough. A new outbreak of the bird flu virus is hitting Europe. Duck and geese farmers in southwest France say they were worried about their livelihoods as authorities continue culling hundreds of thousands of birds to stop the spread of bird flu in the region. France had so far reported 89 outbreaks of the H5N8 bird flu virus. But according to its agriculture ministry, its massive cull could target up to 1.3 million birds in the impacted region to halt the spread of the virus. The H5N8 strain is highly deadly for poultry, but has never been found in humans and cannot be transmitted through food. Czech authorities, meanwhile, also ordered a cull of thousands of its chickens and ducks in 2 small farms in the southeast, while Austria told its farmers to keep all poultry indoors following cases reported in its neighboring countries, Switzerland and Germany. We stay with France, where a new French labor law that came into force at the beginning of the new year aims to protect employees from the pressure to remain connected even when out of office. This is the first time worldwide that any government has sought to protect an employee's work-life balance in such a way. The law requires companies with 50 employees or more to negotiate a deal with unions and establish good practice concerning the right to log off after official hours and during holidays. According to a French communication and expert author, the time spent processing information accounts for 40% of people's working time, which may have negative consequences. She quoted a study saying that office workers are receiving 7 times more information now compared to 4 years ago, and the onslaught of data will become 32 times more in 2020. But the overload is not necessarily being addressed. And China's smart home appliances for a better home shone at the ongoing Consumer Electronics Show that kicked off yesterday in Las Vegas, which runs until Sunday. The most attractive booth displayed model smart kitchens, smart sitting rooms, and smart bathrooms. One of the highlights is a product over the washing platform, which is like an ordinary mirror, but is actually a touchscreen computer which can show the temperature, air quality, and humidity of the room. Another is a circular outlet air conditioner with a fancy wind funnel. The circular design of the air outlet can quickly mix the cold with the hot air. And another is a 3.9mm super thin curved screen Quantum Dot TV, which can make viewers experience the Dolby visual effect like in a cinema. The show has for half a century acted as a launchpad for new innovations and technologies that can change the world.
The Chinese company is an explosive story at CES. Over probably the course of the past 10 or 15 years, we've seen a lot of companies shift from being more export focused to being more innovative focused. And we're seeing that with very large companies. For instance, Huawei is keynoting for the first time this year at the show.
France came from behind to beat Switzerland 2-1 in Perth to secure a place in the Hopman Cup final against the USA. The opening men's singles saw Roger Federer overwhelm Richard Gasquet 6-1, 6-4 in under an hour to signal his return to form following a long injury layoff. Returning this week after 6 months out of action, the Swiss 17 times Grand Slam champion beat Briton Dan Evans before suffering a 3-set loss to German teenager Alexander Zverev at the mixed team event. Following Federer's masterclass, Kristina Mladenovic beat Belinda
6-1, 6-4.
Defending champion Milos Raonic beat former world number 1 Rafael Nadal in 3 sets to reach the Brisbane International semi-finals. The big serving Canadian overcame the Spaniard 4-6, 6-3, 6-4 and set up a last 4 clash with 7th seed Grigor Dimitrov. Returning from a wrist injury, Nadal took the first set, but momentum swung at 3-3 in the second when Raonic claimed 4 straight games. Raonic capitalized on an early break in the decider and served out to book a semi-final against Dimitrov, who beat Austrian Dominic Thiem 6-3, 4-6, 6-3. And finally, it will be chilly tonight with frosty conditions prevailing after midnight over the hilly areas, Badia and the eastern plains. Temperatures are expected to slightly drop tomorrow. Therefore, it will remain cold in most regions, including in the northern Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea. The Gulf of Aqaba can continue to enjoy fair weather tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. A recap of our top stories. Russia says it has begun reducing its military forces in Syria under the terms of a ceasefire deal brokered between opposition groups and the Syrian government. Iraqi troops carry out an unprecedented night raid and enter Mosul from the north for the first time as they begin a new phase in the 3-month operation. And duck and geese farmers in France say they are worried about their livelihoods as authorities continue culling hundreds of thousands of birds to stop the spread of bird flu. With this, we come to the end of the news. I'm Dana Abusham. Thanks for watching and have a good night.